These two very short, pithy parables or stories are one repeated from last week so that you can see the two of them together, indicate that the teaching of Jesus is that the kingdom of God, this expression of God's will for how we live on earth, is like a treasure. It's hidden. And so in both these parables, someone is seeking that which is of great value. And they seek it until they find it. And then they don't do anything until they can go back and buy the land. And they put all in, everything in order to buy that precious treasure. We thought about that last week in terms of our own lives. What is it that we treasure? What is it that we would go all in for? What is it that we as a church treasure? That we would go all in for? That which we are seeking, looking for, searching for. Today, because we're thinking about Black History Month, I want to talk a little bit about Harriet Tubman. How many have seen the movie Harriet? Okay, so a few people. So I totally recommend it. It is, in my mind, an outstanding movie. In the movie, Harriet, she's a young girl, newly married. Her name is Minty. Her slave name is Minty in the movie. And she's married to a man who's already been freed. And she burns to be free. They do the outlandish thing of going to a lawyer to get a letter that says, based on what the slave owner said back in the 1840s, based on what she had been told, she was entitled to be freed. Well, when they present the letter to the slave owner, he tears it up, totally dismisses it. She decides that she is going to make a break for freedom. And in the ensuing chase, with her running, being chased by the slave owners, she comes to a bridge. And there's no way, because she's being corralled from both sides. She climbs up on the edge of the bridge. And they say, don't, let's make a deal, Minty. We won't sell you, blah, blah, blah. She jumps into the turbulent water below, and as she does, she says she will live free or die. She's all in. She knows the cost of seeking what she wants to find. She knows what she treasures beyond all else, and that is her freedom. And then through wit and cunning and prayer and deep listening, she makes her way to freedom in the north. And she's there for about a year, and she discovers that her dream, her treasure, is not yet fulfilled. Because what she wants for herself, she wants for her husband, and she wants for her family. And so she does the unimaginable thing to the people who are in freedom. She travels back south to the plantation where she was. It's not too far south, it's in Maryland. She goes there thinking her husband will want to come now that she has her freedom. But he, thinking that she had died in that river, has moved on with his life and remarried. So her brothers come, and she leads a group up to freedom. And then she is totally captured by a dream of setting as many people free as she can. In the meantime, she's moved her name from Minty. They told her when she became free that often people who become free choose a new name. Did she have a new name? She said her mother's name was Harriet, although no one ever called her Harriet. And she took her husband's name, and there she became Harriet Tubman. When she traveled north with her brothers and other slaves who had come to escape with her, it was the shaping and the formation of this slave freer who was called Harriet Tubman. She left away her slave identity, her slave name, and she took on this calling. Eventually, she would become known as Moses, the one who sets their people free. It's amazing when you think of it that a movie hasn't been made about Harriet Tubman's life decades ago. But it hasn't been. But it has been now. There's a yearning at this time in history for the voices of the people who've been silenced, for those voices to be lifted up and heard. In this day and age, people are no longer willing to be silent. And so Harriet Tubman's story is told. She's an amazing character. After she personally led about 70 slaves to freedom on the Underground Railroad, and she was the one who would passionately call forth from people who were nervous about various places of organization in the Underground Railroad. She would say, "You forget what it's like to be a slave, but I remember the cries of the people." We cannot lose our confidence or our courage. And so she encourages that Underground Railroad to keep up its work. And then during the Civil War, she returned as a Union spy, and she led 150 black soldiers. And she gave an inspirational talk, which, you got to watch this movie, folks. And she said to them that they would have the capacity to free their brothers and sisters. And they freed over 750 slaves. This is a history that is, on the one hand, primarily history of our neighbors to the south. But it overflows because Canada became the land of freedom. And as tension happened in the south and between the south and the north, to gain freedom, they had to come to Canada. And so we were part of that. But it wasn't totally. We weren't all in, because there wasn't real social integration. Now we're at this time. And it's a wonderful time in history. And it's like that prayer that Martin Luther King says, we're still too little, the kingdom of God as yet. Grant us the privilege of being a part of its regeneration. We are looking for a new earth in which dwells righteousness. There's a lot going on in our world right now with the Wet'suwet'en people. What does freedom look like? What does it mean to be part, for us to act as part of its regeneration? Many of you probably heard, I promised Doug I'd be short today. Many of you probably heard about the investigation into John Vanier this week. No? Okay, so John Vanier, the Canadian hero, the son of a former Governor General and a diplomat, L'Arche has done an investigation into allegations of abuse of women by John Vanier. And the report's going to be released, but L'Arche has already put a statement on their webpage to say that they deeply regret actions by their founder of sexual abuse of 6 women. And when I read it, I thought, this can't be. He was such a hero. Such a good man, we said. But we are living in a time when the regeneration of our society means that no one gets a free pass. No one is allowed to speak one way and live another way. And although it feels like we're lost and we shouldn't have to hear all these things, it is only as we allow those who have been silent victims in our society, as long until we allow their voices to be heard as equal voices in the dialogue of our human culture here in Canada and beyond. It's only when that is allowed to happen that an honest, just foundation can be laid for the true regeneration of our world, of our country, of our church. So much as I don't want to hear the stories, it twigged. I have to hear them. I have to know what the experiences of other people has been. All the voices have to be allowed to be part of the conversation. Sometimes we say, well, we're just being politically correct. We are not just being politically correct. We are allowing all the voices to speak and to have their say so that we can be built on an honest foundation. That's what I think in the church we need to be searching for. Honesty, so that the foundation of the human community that we are helping to build can be inclusive, can be honest, can be just. And when we find opportunities for that, well, we got to be all in. Because it's the very regeneration of our world, of our culture, of our society that we are participating in. Thank you for listening.